Hello everyone, this is Elias Martin of CollectingJapanesePrints.com. Welcome to Woodblock Wednesday, where every Wednesday we get together and discuss Japanese prints, paintings, history, and culture. Today's Woodblock Wednesday features prints from my latest exhibition of Hasui postcard size woodblock prints. In fact, the announcement for this exhibition has not gone out yet. The exhibition is up on my website. It is live, so if you're watching this live, you've gotten the very first announcement of this exhibition. So go there after our conversation and have a look at the selection. The exhibition showcases some really fine work by Hasui. Some of the designs, some of the postcard designs that are in this exhibition have never been seen by me. A few of them are, to my experience, the first time I've seen them. So several are very rare. A few of them are not illustrated in the Hasui catalog raisonné. And so that also sort of speaks to their rarity. But I want to talk about Hasui and his postcard-sized prints, and also the art of postcards, which is something that has been sort of worked by many Japanese artists. It's actually a tradition in an artistic art form. So without further ado, let's go to the table and see what I have. So I'm going to pan out so you could see. I brought out this board so that we can showcase several prints. These are not all of the prints in the exhibition. There are more, but this board will allow me to sort of move things around and enable me to focus on these designs for our conversation today. So what I have here, again, are prints by Kawase Hasui. And for those of you who are not familiar with Hasui, I want to encourage you to watch my other Woodblock Wednesday videos that feature his work. We talk about him, his background, so he's definitely been explored in the past on this series. So I encourage you to have a look there. But for our purposes today, I'll just sort of review a little bit and focus on these postcard size prints. Kawase Hasui was a shinhanga artist. He was one of the main stable artists of Watanabe, who basically started the shinhanga movement. Watanabe basically hired all of the main shinhanga artists and, sort of revolutionized woodblock printmaking in the modern era. And Hasui was one of a few of artists in Watanabe's stable that was able to capture sort of these beautiful artistic ideas that were explored in the Edo period, but produced in sort of a new sort of contemporary or modern paradigm. So more focus in a Western sort of perspective, though in many cases it's really more traditional. But we'll discuss each print and we could see what I mean. But Watanabe hired Hasui to produce almost exclusively landscapes, and so my exhibition that went live today really features some of his more beautiful and thought-provoking and certainly sought-after designs. And I want to also say, besides being a shinhanga artist, Hasui was a watercolorist and produced watercolors actually in preparation for his woodblock prints. And so there's a lot of watercolors out in the marketplace as well as his woodblock prints. And the market right now for Hasui prints is so hot. I mean, Hasui prints, sell almost as soon as they go up on a website. You'll see the marks sold because they're very desirable. The prices are very strong, and for collectors, I really recommend this area of the artist's body of work. These prints are produced in the exact same manner as his larger scale prints. These are all hand done by woodblock carvers who have carved the blocks and printers who have printed the prints. So Hasui designed all of these prints in the same manner, and Watanabe hired and executed these prints in the same way. So they're little gems of the artist's sort of artistic voice of, showcasing the 20th century landscape in Japanese prints. And the other thing I want to say about these prints is that many of them are reworkings of his earlier designs. And so it's fascinating to look at these designs and see how the artist changed the composition and how the artist changed the design to accommodate this size, and also showcase the design in a different way so that the design and the size work in concert with each other. So, it's not just that the artist produced these prints just to do them. And in fact, in many cases, you kind of see miniature prints of Edo period designs by Hiroshige and Hokusai. And they're just shrunk to a postcard size print. And these are not the case. They've been carefully thought out, and the compositions are produced in a way to highlight the size of the postcard. And in that sense, I mean, these are true works of art unto themselves. And I'll talk about postcards and the tradition of postcard making in a bit. But right now, I just want to zoom in, and I want to show these beautiful prints. You could see that the way that they're made is with great care, and all of the woodblock printmaking techniques are utilized. The colors, the way that they're printed, the way that they're blended onto the design. You can see that beautiful bokashi, or the color gradation around the boat in the water. And of course, these subjects, these snow scenes, are just stunning. And as many of you know, if you're a collector, you know that Hasui is so famous for his snow scenes. And to be able to acquire an original work by Hasui of the period in a subject such as a snow scene is very hard to do. You got to find it, first of all. But second of all, the prices for these prints are quite strong. And you can expect to pay thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in some cases. So for the collector, especially the new collector or one sort of on a budget, postcard-sized prints are just the perfect avenue to explore if you're interested in getting into the hobby. So I'm going to zoom in on some of these designs so I could show you how beautiful the printing is, and the Beren work in the background. They're here again. In many cases, if you just look at this design, it's produced in such wonderful proportions that if I didn't tell you it was a postcard size print, you would think it's a regular size Oban print, because the artist produced designs here in proportions that work for the postcard. And in many cases, he stripped the design and focused on almost the most important and essential aspect of the design, so that the viewer is led quickly to a moment that is powerful in its contemplation and its sort of significance. All of these are full of this stunning artistic power that Hasui can bring in his designs. It's kind of amazing to think that these are just all smaller scale works. So I want to highlight some things. I have the Kellogg Raisonné here, Kawasa Hasui, and then it's a 2-volume set. It comes in this box, and basically the Hasui postcards are illustrated in black and white in the second volume. Actually, it's the first volume, and all of his body of work that's sort of normal size, Oban or larger, is illustrated in here. And so I want to point out some designs that I think are sort of relate to some of these designs that are postcards. You see here, this is a print from 1920, so it's a pre-earthquake design, and you see the telephone poles, and you see a beautiful snow scene with a figure walking through the little village area here. And then you look at these two designs. This has very much the same flavor as this design as well. These two really remind me of that print. And all of the essential elements in a Hasui print are here. The atmospheric quality of the snow falling in this design, and sort of the tight composition. You see how the viewer's eye is moved towards the figure at the center. So here as well. So these two prints are sort of a reworking of this design. And this design sells for $20,000 to $30,000 on the marketplace, and these postcard size prints are original, period, from the 1930s, and they're priced on my site for $300 to $350. So they're very reasonable when you're thinking about Hasui's body of work. So let me move along and show you another print. Here we have this stunning view of these trees in the moonlight, And here we have a reworking of that design. He's filled out the trees here, and so it's obviously not in the fall. But this composition with mostly blue filling the space here is the same idea. It's the same idea. In many cases, I like what he did in this print more, but both of them are stunning. All right, let me move along here. It's quite a few prints. Now I wanted to show this work here. This is a theme that comes up in his prints. You see sort of an abandoned sort of little boat that was once used to move around a lagoon. It has a kind of a quaint sort of village feel to it. There's almost like a rustic wabi-sabi quality of this boat that's sort of been there and weathered through time. And you see that again on this design. But notice the way that the composition has been created, it's much more close to the subject of the boat, and the background is closer to the viewer. So all of those aspects within this design were done deliberately to highlight the postcard size print. I was going to talk about this one, very similar to this one again, which was similar to the first one, but we've already discussed that. Now, this one is interesting. There you have sort of this fishing village with a wharf, and you have a figure that's lit a fire, warming his hands in the moonlight. Very beautiful, poetic, serene design, and he has sort of taken that sort of idea and reworked it. So we have a fisherman here on a boat, warming his hands on a fire right here, and then we have the fishing village on the side. So it's the same idea, but the composition is different. This is more of a traditional Japanese aerial view of a design. So this is more of a traditional Japanese perspective versus the other print. But I think, both of them work really well. Same subject, same idea, but worked out differently to produce a fantastic effect in two different formats. I mean, it's amazing to think that these prints are basically 5 by 3 inches. And he's able to set the stage to create a stunning, dramatic, beautiful design in each and every single one of them. So, one has to say, I have some collectors who love Hasui's work, but then they sort of look down and go, well, I only want Oban size prints. And they don't understand, they see the big money being traded for these prints, and they think, oh, well, they're more important. But I always suggest to my collectors and my clients that collect things that people haven't taken notice yet, because there's some bargains. And in these prints, if you can find early period prints done in Hasui's lifetime, and they're attainable, then you'll be able to find some wonderful original work by Hasui for hundreds of dollars, not thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. The other thing I want to point out in terms of connoisseurship, There are some postcards that are being printed now, like some Oban-size Hasuis, but they vary in terms of quality. The paper stock is thicker than the originals from the 30s. These are all done from the 30s, and so the paper is more pliable. It's not thick, and the colors that are applied, they're not as applied as subtly. So, if this was a later printing, and I don't think there's a later printing of this design, there's only a handful of designs that they printed later. So that's also something to keep in mind. But, you won't get this kind of bokashi here. Or in this print, I mean, there's so much going on with the tree in the background, the bokashi and the snow falling. This is not something you see on the later printings. In fact, this design isn't known in a later printing. But I just want to highlight how beautiful and how carefully done this is. You could see the bokashi on the rooftop here of this temple. So, these are really fantastic designs. And so what I also want to get into really quick, and I'll come back and I'll show the prints one last time, is that there's these really great books available. This book showcases the collection of Leonard Lauder, the Estee Lauder heir, and they're two brothers, and this particular brother collects a lot of art. Both of them do, but part of his vast collection contained Japanese postcards. And this book is fantastic. His collection went to the MFA in Boston, and this book was produced to highlight his vast collection of postcards. And this book does an amazing job of discussing the history of postcards. And not just that, it also showcases the Lauder collection really well. And it starts basically in the Meiji period for the Lauder collection, and it goes through up until modern times, up until recently. And so, the subjects are varied in this collection, but you could, by quickly going through this book, you get a sense of the long and important tradition of postcards. They were really got into fashion during the Meiji period when there was travel, and a lot of these cards were actually used and mailed in the post. Not necessarily the Hasui ones, but postcards. And also postcards were used during the war as propaganda, and there's all kinds of other reasons why they were made. But the top artists of the time, the vast majority of them, worked in postcards. A small portion of their body of work did involve postcards. And this is another book. It's a Japanese and French publication. And, without going through all of this, there's a lot of repetition between these two. But, you could see this card right here, this postcard, is by Yamamoto Kanai. He is the founder of the Sosaku-hanga movement. And postcards for the Sosaku-hanga artists were also really important. It was a way to distribute work among between other artists or collectors or fans of the artists, and it was a way to also distribute ideas, artistic ideas, quickly. You have to remember that in the Meiji period, there's no television, and so a quick way to get your artwork out there is to produce it as a postcard and mail it out to your best clients or your artistic friends in your circle and trade artistic ideas. So postcards were really important for Sosaku-hanga artists as they were in shinhanga. And so these prints are very important, partly because of the history they represent, the tradition of postcard making, but also as Hasui prints themselves, they reflect Hasui's charm in his ability to produce these wonderful atmospheric snow scenes or rain scenes or temple scenes that are contemplative and charming, that highlight the Japanese landscape. So I've spoken a lot. I just want to zoom in and show you the artwork one last time. I want to say one last thing before we go. As postcards go, they were not produced in the same numbers as Hasui's larger scale prints. They were certainly sold to collectors, and they were sold to use as postcards. And so a lot of them didn't survive because they were used in a utilitarian sort of fashion, but also they just weren't produced in the same numbers. And partly because I think they didn't get as much money from making postcards as making larger size prints. And so in terms of Hasui's body of work, not a lot of research has gone into postcards. The catalog raisonné only illustrates about 100. And there are scholars that estimate that Hasui may have produced somewhere between 200 and 300 postcards, but many of them either haven't been discovered, have not survived. But even then, that amount is a fraction of the artist's output. And so when you look at all of these, you have to also incorporate the calculus of the rarity of these. And as a collector, it's important to know that you have rare, important work by an artist. And you don't need to look further than these postcards to be able to acquire some important work by Hasui at a very reasonable price. So again, these are fantastic works that are currently up on my website in my current exhibition called it's called Kawasa Hasui in Miniature, Postcards from the Japanese Landscape. That's a lot to say. So I just want to thank all of you for joining me today on Woodblock Wednesday. And as I said at the beginning of this talk, this exhibition has just gone up on my website, but I have not made an announcement to my email list. So if you're watching this live, you've gotten first advance notice of the exhibition. Run to my website, collectingjapaneseprints.com. Have a look. Everything that you've seen here is available for sale, as well as some others that I did not show. So have a look, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. And so, I'm always happy to field questions. So thanks again for joining me on Woodblock Wednesday. And I want to encourage you to watch my other videos that are all archived on YouTube. So there's nearly 100 on YouTube. So please have a look. And I usually want to thank all of you on YouTube for watching. So please, thank you for checking us out. And again, if you're interested, go to the website, collectingjapaneseprints.com. Thanks again.